The morning sun bathed the quiet suburban neighborhood in a warm glow, its streets lined with neat houses and manicured lawns. It was the kind of place that seemed peaceful at first glance, but for some, it held unspoken divides. Officer Mark Reynolds, a middle-aged cop with a sharp uniform and sharper opinions, patrolled the area as part of his daily routine. Known for his stern demeanor, Mark took pride in keeping order, though his biases often clouded his judgment. As he cruised slowly down Maple Lane, his eyes caught sight of a sleek black car parked outside one of the upscale homes. The car stood out, not because of its make or model, but because of who was inside. A black woman, dressed in a tailored blazer, sat calmly in the driver's seat, scrolling through her phone. To Mark, something about the scene didn't sit right. "Probably doesn't belong here," he muttered to himself, pulling his patrol car to the curb. He stepped out, adjusting his belt as he approached. Inside the car, Jasmine Carter glanced up and saw him coming. She sighed, already sensing what was about to unfold. Jasmine, a dedicated teacher and principal at the local school, was no stranger to moments like these. Despite her successes and position, she knew her presence in certain spaces was often questioned. Mark knocked on her window. "Morning, ma'am. Mind telling me what you're doing here?" His tone was polite but laced with suspicion. Jasmine's heart sank, but she kept her expression calm. "I live here," she replied softly, gesturing to the house behind her. Mark raised an eyebrow. "Do you have ID to prove that?" he asked, his skepticism unmistakable. It was just another day, but Jasmine knew this encounter would be anything but ordinary. Jasmine rolled down her window, meeting Officer Reynolds' gaze with quiet composure. His expression was stern, his stance authoritative, a man ready to assert his control. "This is a nice area," he began, his voice edged with skepticism. "Haven't seen you around here before. What's your business here?" Jasmine took a measured breath, reminding herself to stay calm. "Officer, as I said, I live here. That's my house," she said, pointing toward the neat brick home just a few steps away. Mark glanced at the house, then back at her, his lips pressed into a thin line. "Mind showing me some ID, just to confirm?" Though the request stung, Jasmine reached into her bag and retrieved her driver's license. She handed it over, her movements deliberate and steady. Mark studied it for a moment, then handed it back. "And how exactly can you afford to live in a place like this?" he asked, his tone turning condescending. Jasmine's chest tightened. The implication behind his words was clear, and it cut deep. But instead of reacting, she squared her shoulders and replied evenly, "I work hard, officer. I'm the principal of the local middle school." Mark's eyes narrowed. "Principal, huh?" he said, almost as if testing the word. His disbelief was palpable, his gaze scanning her as though searching for cracks in her story. Inside, Jasmine felt a mix of hurt and frustration bubbling beneath her composed exterior. It wasn't the first time she'd been judged based on her appearance, and she knew it likely wouldn't be the last. Still, she maintained her calm, determined not to let this man's prejudice define her. She held her ground, knowing the truth was on her side, even if he couldn't see it. As Officer Reynolds continued his lecture, Jasmine's focus shifted momentarily. Through the car window, she noticed a young girl walking toward them. A familiar face framed by a neatly braided ponytail and a blue school uniform. Jasmine immediately recognized her. "Emily?" Jasmine called out, her voice calm but tinged with surprise. The girl froze mid-step, her eyes widening as she registered Jasmine's face. "Principal Carter?" she stammered, her tone a mixture of shock and embarrassment. Officer Reynolds turned sharply, confusion etched across his face. "You know my daughter?" he demanded, his voice suddenly less certain. Jasmine offered a gentle smile, her composure intact. "Yes, I do. Emily is one of my students, and a wonderful one at that. She's bright, respectful, and always eager to help others," she said, glancing at Emily, whose cheeks flushed pink. Mark's brow furrowed. "Wait a second. You're her, principal?" His disbelief was evident, his earlier confidence wavering. "That's right," Jasmine replied evenly. "I've been the principal at Ridgewood Middle School for several years now. I've also had the privilege of teaching Emily in some of my leadership workshops. She's an exceptional young lady." Emily nodded quickly, stepping closer. "Dad, she's amazing. Principal Carter helped me so much when I was struggling in math last year. She stayed late after school just to tutor me." Her words tumbled out, genuine and earnest. Mark's face softened as the pieces fell into place. The authoritative edge in his demeanor melted, replaced by a flicker of embarrassment. For the first time, he seemed to see Jasmine not as a stranger to be questioned, but as a person who had made a meaningful impact on his daughter's life. Mark stood rooted in place, Emily's words echoing in his mind. His earlier accusations now felt painfully hollow. The woman he had tried to demean was the very person who had gone above and beyond for his daughter, someone Emily clearly admired and respected. Shame crept over him like a weight he couldn't shake. I didn't realize," Mark said, his voice quieter, lacking its earlier confidence. Jasmine observed him carefully, her expression soft but resolute. She saw the cracks forming in his tough exterior and decided this was a moment for growth, not resentment. "Officer Reynolds," she began, her tone steady, "this isn't just about me. It's about the countless people who face judgments every day based on nothing more than their appearance or the color of their skin." Mark shifted uncomfortably, but he didn't interrupt. Jasmine continued, her words measured yet firm. "Do you know how exhausting it is to constantly prove your worth? To know that no matter what you achieve, some people will still see you as less? It's not just hurtful, it's dehumanizing." Her voice softened as she added, "Empathy and respect aren't optional. They're what make us human. And as someone in a position of authority, you have a responsibility to lead by example. Your actions ripple far beyond the moment." Mark's chest tightened. Her words pierced through his defenses, forcing him to confront the harm his biases had caused, not just today, but likely countless times before. He looked at Jasmine, then at Emily, who watched him expectantly. "I was wrong," he admitted, his voice thick with regret. "I've been wrong for a long time." Jasmine nodded, her gaze unwavering. "Realizing it is the first step. What you do next matters most." Mark felt the truth in her words. For the first time, he truly understood. Mark took a deep breath, his gaze meeting Jasmine's with an unfamiliar vulnerability. The weight of his actions pressed heavily on him, and for once his pride didn't stand in the way. "Miss Carter," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "I owe you an apology. I was wrong to make assumptions about you, to question your place here. There's no excuse for how I acted." Jasmine's expression remained calm, but there was a glimmer of hope in her eyes. She nodded, allowing him to continue. "I've let my biases blind me, and that's not who I want to be. Not as a father, not as an officer, not as a person," Mark admitted. His voice grew steadier, but his regret was clear. "I can't change what I did, but I promise you, I will do better." Standing nearby, Emily stepped forward, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "Thank you, Principal Carter," she said, her words soft but filled with sincerity. "You've always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. You've taught me so much, not just in school but about being kind and strong. I'm so sorry for how my dad acted." Jasmine placed a gentle hand on Emily's shoulder. "Thank you, Emily. Your kind words mean the world to me. And as for your dad," she added, looking at Mark, "what matters now is the steps you take moving forward." Mark nodded, his resolve firm. "I'll start by educating myself, by listening, and by making sure I use my role to bring people together, not tear them apart. You've opened my eyes, Miss Carter, and for that, I'll always be grateful." In that moment, the tension dissolved, leaving behind an understanding that growth and change were possible, even in the most unlikely circumstances. Months passed, and Officer Mark Reynolds took the first steps toward change. He began attending community workshops focused on confronting implicit biases and fostering understanding. At first, the sessions were uncomfortable, forcing him to face truths he had long ignored. But over time, Mark realized that acknowledging his flaws was the only way forward. Inspired by Jasmine's words and Emily's admiration for her principal, Mark became an advocate for change within the police force. He encouraged his colleagues to approach their work with empathy and fairness, often sharing his own story as a cautionary tale. His shift in perspective resonated with those around him, slowly fostering a culture of understanding in the department. One sunny Saturday, Mark found himself at Ridgewood Middle School for a community event. The schoolyard buzzed with activity. Students running games, parents volunteering at booths, and teachers overseeing it all. Mark wasn't there in uniform, but as a volunteer, carrying boxes of supplies and helping set up tables. He felt a sense of pride in giving back, knowing he was contributing to a better environment for the children and families he once viewed through a narrow lens. As he adjusted a banner, Jasmine approached him with a warm smile. "Officer Reynolds," she said, extending a hand. Mark shook her hand firmly, his gratitude evident. "Miss Carter," he replied, his tone filled with genuine respect. "It's good to see you again." They stood together, watching Emily help her classmates at a booth nearby. "You've come a long way," Jasmine remarked. "Thanks to you," Mark admitted. "You opened my eyes. I'll keep working to be better, for Emily, for the community, for everyone." They shared a moment of mutual respect, proof that change is possible when hearts and minds are open. Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, made you think, or brought a smile to your face, we'd love your support to help us share more meaningful stories like this. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on uplifting, emotional, and thought-provoking content. Like this video if it resonated with you. It's a small action that makes a big difference for us. Comment below and share your thoughts. What did you take away from this story? Have you ever experienced or seen something similar? Let's discuss. Share this video with friends and family who could use a little inspiration and positivity today. Your engagement helps us continue to create content that moves and inspires. Thank you for being part of our community. Together, we can spread kindness and hope.